Imagine a galactic bureaucracy so complex that even its own members needed flowcharts and translation algorithms to understand their own policies. Welcome to the Confederated Stellar Governance, a sprawling administrative nightmare that had been managing interstellar relations for roughly 14,000 years before humans even discovered radio waves. The Confederation wasn't just a government. It was a massive, planet-spanning, multi-species administrative machine that made Earth's most labyrinthine bureaucracies look like a child's lemonade stand operation. Picture a structure where 1. Decisions required consensus from no less than 247 distinct sentient species. 2. Communication happened through a complex network of quantum entanglement relays. 3. Diplomatic meetings could last literal decades. Each species had a precise, meticulously documented classification. Humans? We were classified under emerging technological category 7 epsilon, potentially promising, currently unreliable. The Zorblaxian Central Xenological Assessment Committee, a name that sounds like it was designed to put people to sleep, had compiled an 8,742-page report on humanity. Their summary was brutally succinct, chaotic, unpredictable, potentially dangerous if not carefully managed. They weren't wrong. They just didn't understand how right they were. Consider the species that comprised the Confederation's leadership. The crystalline administrators of Proxima Centauri, silicon-based life forms who communicated through intricate light refractions and considered emotion a form of computational error. The quantum consensus collective beings whose entire civilization existed as a distributed neural network, making individual identity a flexible concept. The biomechanical harmony of Epsilon Eridani, part organic, part machine. They viewed linear thinking as an evolutionary weakness. And then there were humans. Messy, emotional, wildly innovative. We were the cosmic equivalent of a toddler with a chemistry set capable of either creating something remarkable or burning the entire house down. Our solar system occupied a peculiar region designated as the Peripheral Development Zone. This wasn't just a geographical classification. It was a diplomatic euphemism for potentially interesting, currently irrelevant. The non-interference protocols weren't just bureaucratic. They were a survival mechanism. The Confederation had seen countless species flame out, spectacularly technological civilizations that burned bright and fast, consuming themselves in nuclear fire or nanotechnological apocalypse. Humanity looked like another potential cautionary tale. What they didn't understand was our fundamental characteristic: resilience. While other species planned millennia-long developmental strategies, humans operated on a completely different wavelength. We didn't just solve problems, we attacked them with a mixture of creativity, desperation, and what can only be described as weaponized stubbornness. Climate change? We'll genetically engineer carbon-consuming organisms and develop fusion technology. Limited resources? We'll mine asteroids and create circular economic models. Interstellar communication challenges? We'll develop quantum entanglement communication networks. Each breakthrough was met with patronizing commentary from the Confederation. How charming, they would say. The humans are developing again. Jack Reeves, our protagonist, understood this dynamic better than most. As a UN Special Diplomatic Envoy to the Confederated Stellar Governance, he occupied a unique position. Part diplomat, part strategic analyst, part professional translator of human chaos into galactic bureaucraties. He knew something was coming. A moment when the accumulated weight of condescension would finally trigger a response. Not a violent outburst, but a calculated, surgical intervention that would redefine humanity's place in the cosmic hierarchy. The Confederation thought they were observing humans. In reality, humans were observing them. Studying, learning, preparing, and patience, as they would soon learn, was not the same as passivity. The stage was set. The players were in position. All that remained was the spark that would change everything. The Confederation's annual diplomatic convergence was supposed to be a routine affair. Hundreds of species, thousands of delegates, and enough bureaucratic paperwork to wallpaper an entire planet. Jack Reeves had attended enough of these meetings to know they were essentially expensive networking events where nothing of actual importance ever happened. This year was different. The venue was the massive orbital station Nexus Prime, a technological marvel that looked like someone had taken a crystal, a beehive, and a quantum computer, thrown them into a blender, and then polished the result until it gleamed. Artificial gravity, simultaneous translation systems, and security protocols so complex that getting through checkpoint screening was harder than solving a Riemann hypothesis. Jack's credentials were impeccable, but that didn't mean he enjoyed the process. The security scan was performed by a 7-limbed Vortexian, whose entire body seemed to be a living computational device. Its multiple appendages moved with mathematical precision, each scanning a different aspect of his body and diplomatic credentials. Species human, the Vortexian announced, its voice a perfect blend of electronic chirp and linguistic algorithm. Diplomatic clearance level tertiary provisional. Jack knew what that meant. Basically, he was allowed to speak, but not too loudly, not too convincingly. The main conference chamber was a marvel of Xene architecture. Imagine a massive spherical room where gravity seemed optional, where delegates from silicon-based, energy-based, and biochemical species could all exist comfortably. Holographic displays flickered with real-time translation, and the ambient temperature shifted constantly to accommodate the diverse physiological needs of the attendees. Seated directly across from Jack was Krell Nax, the Arcturian diplomatic attaché. Picture a being that looked like a cross between an octopus, a supercomputer, and a very judgmental librarian. Its tentacles were constantly in motion, each one managing a different holographic display, processing information at speeds that would make Earth's most advanced AI look like an abacus. Diplomatic Representative Reeves Krell Nax began, its voice a carefully modulated blend of frequencies designed to be universally comprehensible. The Confederation has been reviewing humanity's recent technological developments. Jack knew exactly what was coming. Another patronizing assessment. Another thinly veiled suggestion that humans were cute but ultimately inconsequential. We note with some concern, Krell Nax continued, your species' rapid quantum computing advancements. The rate of innovation suggests potential destabilization of existing technological hierarchies. Translation, you're developing too quickly, and we're getting uncomfortable. Jack maintained a neutral expression. Years of diplomatic training had taught him that the most powerful response was often a perfectly calibrated silence. Krell Nax's tentacles shifted color, a subtle Arcturian signal of mild agitation. The Confederation recommends a developmental moratorium on certain quantum research vectors. For stability. And there it was. Not a suggestion, not a request. A recommendation that was, in diplomatic parlance, a barely disguised order. What they didn't understand was that humans had a unique relationship with unsolicited recommendations. We didn't just ignore them. We used them as fuel for even more aggressive innovation. Jack leaned forward, his movements deliberate. I appreciate the Confederation's concern, he said, each word precisely chosen. Humanity will, of course, review the recommendation. Krell Nax's tentacles performed what could only be described as a bureaucratic victory wiggle. Another lesser species brought into line. Another potential technological threat neutralized. If only they knew. What Krell Nax and the entire Confederation failed to understand was that every attempt to slow humanity down only made us more determined. Every patronizing recommendation was another challenge. Every diplomatic roadblock was an invitation to find a more creative solution. Jack Reeves wasn't just a diplomat. He was a messenger. A warning. A harbinger of a fundamental shift that the Confederation was too comfortable and too complacent to see coming. The game was about to change, and humanity was holding the reset button. 3 standard galactic cycles after the diplomatic convergence, the tension had been building like a pressure cooker with a faulty release valve. The Confederation's systematic attempts to throttle human technological development had gone from patronizing to actively aggressive. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, head of the UN Interstellar Research Division, was not a woman you wanted to antagonize. Imagine a human who combined the strategic mind of a chess grandmaster, the technical brilliance of a quantum physicist, and the patience of a volcano about to erupt. The incident began with what the Confederation called a developmental restriction protocol, a fancy term for completely shutting down human research initiatives in quantum communication and advanced propulsion technologies. They didn't just slow down research. They implemented a comprehensive blockade that would make Cold War-era trade embargoes look like a friendly neighborhood potluck. The official communication came through the quantum diplomatic relay, a message so laden with bureaucratic jargon that it required 3 separate AI translators and 2 human linguists to fully decode. Official Confederation Directive 7 Gamma Epsilon. Immediate cessation of all quantum entanglement research vectors pertaining to faster-than-light communication modalities. Continued pursuit of said research will result in diplomatic isolation and potential technological sanctions. Jack Reeves was the first to see the full implications. This wasn't just a recommendation. This was an attempt to completely strangle human technological progress. The breaking point came during a closed-door emergency session. The room was a marvel of modern security: quantum encrypted walls, holographic displays that could detect and neutralize any form of external surveillance, and enough computational power to run a small country. Dr. Rodriguez stood at the center of the room, her presentation a masterpiece of restrained fury. "They're not just trying to slow us down," she explained, her voice a razor-sharp instrument of precision. "They're attempting to permanently arrest our technological development." The holographic displays showed a comprehensive analysis of the Confederation's actions. Years of subtle manipulations, diplomatic roadblocks, research funding interruptions, technical embargoes. Colonel Marcus Chen, head of UN Strategic Defense, leaned forward. A veteran of multiple global conflict resolution initiatives, he understood geopolitics and now galactic politics at a cellular level. "They've underestimated us," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. The plan that emerged was both brilliant and audacious. Humanity would not fight the Confederation with military might or aggressive posturing. We would use our most powerful weapon: innovation. Dr. Rodriguez had been working on a project so revolutionary that even her closest colleagues thought it was impossible. A breakthrough in quantum communication that didn't just improve existing technologies, it fundamentally reimagined how information could be transmitted across vast interstellar distances. The human response would be surgical, precise, unexpected. Jack Reeves would be the diplomatic face of this response. Dr. Rodriguez would be its technical architect. Colonel Chen would ensure its strategic implementation. They weren't just going to prove the Confederation wrong. They were going to rewrite the entire understanding of technological development in the galaxy. The countdown had begun, and the Confederation had no idea what was coming. Humanity was about to teach the galaxy a lesson in humility. Humanity's response was nothing short of extraordinary. Not a military strike, not a diplomatic protest. Something far more devastating: complete technological judo. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's quantum communication breakthrough was less a technological innovation and more a cosmic magic trick. Traditional faster-than-light communication relied on complex entanglement protocols that were slow, expensive, and easily monitored. Her solution? Completely circumvent the entire existing system. The quantum resonance cascade, as it was technically called, was essentially a way to transmit information through probabilistic quantum state manipulations that made traditional communication look like two cavemen banging rocks together. Jack Reeves described it in a way that would make most physicists weep and most bureaucrats spontaneously combust. "We didn't just break the rules, we rewrote the entire rulebook and then used it as kindling." The implementation was breathtakingly simple in its complexity. By creating a quantum communication network that was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, humans effectively rendered the Confederation's communication monitoring systems completely useless. Imagine trying to track a message that exists in multiple quantum states simultaneously. It was like trying to catch smoke with a butterfly net while riding a unicycle during an earthquake. Colonel Marcus Chen's strategic approach was equally brilliant. Instead of confronting the Confederation directly, they would demonstrate their technological superiority by solving problems the other species had considered impossible. First, target the Epsilon Quadrant resource crisis. For generations, the silicon-based crystalline administrators had struggled with a fundamental resource limitation in their home systems. Their entire civilization depended on rare mineral compounds that were becoming increasingly scarce. The human solution? A nano-engineering approach that could literally transform existing mineral structures at the atomic level, creating sustainable resource generation that made their previous economic models look like a kindergarten counting exercise. The Confederation's monitoring systems first detected something was wrong when their standard communication interdiction protocols simply failed to work. Krell Nax, the Arcturian diplomatic attaché, discovered this during a routine communication verification. Its tentacles, normally a model of computational precision, actually twitched in what could only be described as confusion. The quantum relay simply returned a message that, when translated, essentially said error. Conventional monitoring protocols are now obsolete. Please stand by for system update. It was the most polite technological middle finger in galactic history. Within 72 hours, humanity had rendered the Confederation's communication monitoring systems ineffective, solved a generations-long resource crisis for a major stellar civilization, developed a quantum communication network that made their previous technologies look like two tin cans connected by a string. The message was clear: we're not just catching up, we're running laps around you. Jack Reeves' final communication to the Confederation was a masterpiece of diplomatic understatement. Regarding your previous developmental restrictions, kindly reconsider. Humanity is now open to collaborative discussions. Translation: we win. You lose. Let's talk. The galaxy would never be the same. Part 5: Galactic Paradigm Shift. The aftermath was nothing short of cosmic chaos. Imagine an administrative system so complex that it had maintained relative stability for 14,000 years, suddenly discovering that a species they'd been treating like a technological toddler had just rewritten every single fundamental operating protocol. The Confederation's emergency sessions looked like a multi-species panic room. Crystalline administrators flickered with what could only be described as bureaucratic terror. Quantum neural networks seemed to short-circuit. The biomechanical harmony of Epsilon Eridani developed what could only be described as a computational anxiety attack. Krell Nax, the Arcturian diplomatic attaché, found itself in the unenviable position of having to explain how a species classified as emerging technological category 7 Epsilon had essentially performed a bloodless coup of galactic technological governance. The initial reports were a masterpiece of understatement. Preliminary assessment: human technological capabilities significantly exceed previous estimations. Immediate recategorization required. Translation: we spectacularly underestimated these guys. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, watching the galactic diplomatic meltdown from UN headquarters, couldn't help but smile. The quantum communication network they'd developed wasn't just a technological breakthrough. It was a complete systemic hack of interstellar diplomatic protocols. The resource solution they'd provided to the crystalline administrators was the equivalent of solving a Rubik's Cube that had been unsolved for millennia, and then teaching everyone how to solve it in under 30 seconds. Colonel Marcus Chen broke down the strategic implications during a classified briefing. We didn't just prove our technological capabilities. We demonstrated that technological development isn't about raw power. It's about creative problem-solving, adaptability, and the willingness to completely ignore existing limitations. The galactic response was a mixture of terror, respect, and what could only be described as professional jealousy. The quantum consensus collective, a civilization that prided itself on distributed intelligence and measured decision-making, was the first to officially request a technological exchange program with humanity. This was equivalent to Harvard asking a community college for advanced learning techniques. Jack Reeves, now elevated to a position that was part diplomat, part technological ambassador, found the entire situation darkly amusing. For years, he told his team, they treated us like we were children. Now they're asking us to teach them how to play the game. The most telling moment came during the first post-incident Confederation meeting. When the standard diplomatic protocols were initiated, a quantum communication relay simply appeared in the center of the chamber. It projected a holographic message that was simultaneously translated into every known linguistic format. Collaborative opportunity notification: humanity is now available for technological and diplomatic partnerships. Previous restrictions have been deemed counterproductive. The word counterproductive was delivered with such precise bureaucratic shade that it made several alien delegates physically recoil. Humanity hadn't just arrived on the galactic stage. We'd walked in, rearranged the furniture, and asked if anyone wanted coffee. The message was clear: we're not just players in this game. We're about to become the game designers. 5 standard galactic cycles after the recalibration event, as historians would later euphemistically call humanity's spectacular diplomatic and technological takedown of the Confederation, the universe had fundamentally changed. UN Interstellar Relations Headquarters had been transformed from a modest diplomatic compound to what could only be described as the galaxy's most unexpected power center. Where once there were conference rooms and bureaucratic offices, now stood a hub of technological and cultural exchange that made the old Confederation look like a high school model and club. Jack Reeves, now senior diplomatic strategist, reflected on the change during his morning briefing. The office walls were adorned with holographic displays showing collaborative research projects, technological exchanges, and what could only be described as the most comprehensive "we told you so" presentation in Galactic history. The key he would often tell new diplomatic recruits was never about military might. It was about showing them we could solve problems they'd given up on centuries ago. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had become something of a legendary figure. Her quantum communication breakthrough had not just revolutionized interstellar communication, it had fundamentally reimagined how information could be shared across vast cosmic distances. Scientific institutions across the galaxy now studied what was colloquially known as the Rodriguez Principle, the concept that technological limitations are mostly just failures of imagination. The crystalline administrators, who had once looked down on humanity, now sent regular research delegations. Their entire economic model had been transformed by the resource manipulation techniques developed by human nano-engineers. It was like watching a condescending parent suddenly realize their child was actually a genius. Colonel Marcus Chen's strategic approach had become required study in diplomatic and military academies across multiple star systems. The art of solving complex problems through innovative thinking, rather than direct confrontation, was now considered the pinnacle of advanced civilizational strategy. The Confederation still existed, but it was no longer the rigid, hierarchical structure it had once been. It had been forced to become more flexible, more adaptive. Humanity hadn't destroyed the system, we'd improved it. During one of the anniversary celebrations marking the recalibration event, Krell, the same Arcturian diplomat who had once tried to limit human research, approached Jack Reeves with what passed for a smile among its species. "We drastically misunderstood your potential," the alien admitted, its tentacles performing what could only be described as a diplomatic bow of respect. Jack's response was vintage human diplomacy. "We know. The galaxy had learned a fundamental lesson: never underestimate a species that views impossible as just another interesting challenge." As a final note in the official historical records, a quote was added attributed to Dr. Rodriguez during a landmark scientific conference. "The universe doesn't belong to the most powerful. It belongs to those willing to reimagine what's possible." Humanity hadn't just arrived on the galactic stage. We'd rewritten the entire script,